represents, in my opinion, every person has to make that decision.
Who are in this conflict, right? The minstrel is dancing for white supremacy. Puppet now sees white supremacy. You know when you tap dancing for white supremacy.
This pandemic has been going on for multiple generations. And what happened in the George Floyd situation, we began to pull back the layers.
So I'm learning, and I'm teaching my young women that I work with, don't take everything so personal. Because what I have to always do is exercise those core principles.
But I'm also the creative director and founder of a digital media space called On a Personal Note. And what it is to showcase this menagerie of people, places, and things that I've serendipitously encountered with the hope that it will energize and exhilarate others to pursue their own life-affirming goals and dreams. There is serendipity in how I met Hannah, and how Hannah has become one of those menagerie of people, places, and things that I have been able to amplify and connect, and then be able to be here and be honored to share this with you all. So thank you. I'll tell you that when I was a kid, one of the things that I always wanted to do was I wanted to be an A&R rep. Now, I feel like that doesn't really exist today with the record labels now, but it stood for artist and repertoire. And I had always found myself discovering new, interesting people and creatives and artists and music, and finding myself in tiny little rooms where I just get to hear a violinist that no one will ever have seen before, and wanting to amplify and connect them. That didn't happen for me, but what it did do is it gave me a path and a direction as I pursued my journalism career, my public relations career, and the civics and philanthropy that I'm currently engaged in today. I serve on I'm event chair of the Chicago International Film Festival, whose president is here. Her name is Emily. We are on the associate board, and so we are able to work to be able to promote and highlight younger audiences, younger filmmakers, people who wouldn't necessarily be able to have exposure. There's also within that committee a former member who has moved on to the Black Perspectives Committee of the Chicago International Film Festival. So this is just a quick shout out that is happening in mid-October, so keep an eye out for programming that's happening around that. I also am newly appointed as the Director of Engagement for UN Women Chicago. And so with that is once again being able to find creative, interesting ways to be able to bring out social issues and tough subjects in a way that can be fun and accessible for all, while still being able to kind of touch that empathy and intuitiveness of other people so that they start to see people as humans. And once you recognize someone else's humanity, it's a little bit harder to hate them and judge them and all of that. So it is brave and courageous for you all to have come here to purchase a ticket to a film you may have not seen before, to purchase a ticket to a film that might challenge what you already know, bring up some uncomfortable things inside of you, and to be able to be comfortable to hear other different perspectives. And then, of course, to come here on a Saturday and look so good. So with that, I will share the first time that I finished watching this film. I had met Hannah on a leadership committee that we had both served on, and as soon as I finished introducing myself at that very first meeting, she came over to me and was like, "You're on the International Film Festival Board. Here's the things that I'm doing. I'm putting this film out. I'm going to Film Fest." And I remember just being struck immediately by how easy she was able to highlight her accomplishments and still me not feel like it was braggadocious or weird. She was just passionate. And so as a connector, my own life purpose of engagement and connecting, I remember going through my Rolodex, like, who can I be able to connect her with that we can just at least one more step? And so here we are, that was 2018, here we are 2021. When I first saw the film, the three things that really popped up for me was that I was viscerally altered, I felt like fractured concrete, with the shades of gray that I began processing after coming to terms with where I fall on this spectrum of minstrel and puppet, where I fell in some of the internalized supremacy that I was feeling, the internalized capitalist structures I was feeling, where I did not realize that I even had privilege in terms of the elements of colorism. Like, it brought up a lot, and I had to sit with it. And so it was a whole bunch of shades of gray for me. And the third thing was, it developed deep empathy for people who I had been neglecting before, of how they were navigating through life and the stuff that I didn't have to worry about. So those are just 3 things that I felt. Not all of those things are you gonna walk away thinking and feeling and perceiving today, because we're here today to not only premiere this for the first time, but we are doing this as an exclusive debut to the public. Outside of screening rooms at Pittsburgh International Film Festival, DC Shorts, Cannes, this is the first time that the public will be ever seeing this, and now we'll have the opportunity to be able to see it for themselves. So you're also here making history. Again, don't take my word for it that Minstrel versus Puppet is a great film. It has won the following awards. It was U.S. Outstanding Narrative from the DC Shorts Film Festival. It was the regional winner of the Reel-to-Reel Film Competition. It won the Award of Merit in the Best Shorts Film Competition and Best Musical Film at the Feedback Experimental Dance and Musical Festival. I'm gonna now just leave you with a few of the judges' reviews from when it screened at Cannes in 2019. 1, beautifully shot, written, and performed, very compelling to watch. 2, the acting and the lyrical poetry are perfect. The dilemma of women and women of color face is so clear. It also brings forth the battle among women that distracts them from the real fighting. Great writing. 3, what an amazing accomplishment. The vocal, physicalization, makeup, and costume choices were very, very well done. After several weeks of viewing dozens upon dozens of films, this is only the second 10 I've given for performance. And 4, the directing was strong. Angles and lighting were well used towards accomplishing the desired effect. Sets were great. Makeup and costume departments are to be commended. I don't see any glaring weaknesses in this piece. Don't get too attached to your organizing business, Ms. Bonecutter. Hollywood is calling. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, people, Minstrel versus Puppet.
You lazy female, what a waste. I was always in charge, still am to this day. These loops that they have you hop and skip through, trick that ain't for me, that's for puppets like you, you dumb puppet. This deal, this scam, this continued chainery, let's break it and become who we were born to be.
I wanted to offer some context. The judges' reviews from Cannes. This is one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. If you have seen and followed pop culture, you will recognize those infamous red steps. And it is a global film festival that looks specifically for interesting, new, and innovative talent. And so with that is what you just saw that elicited the responses from those judges that I shared with you before. It has been seen in some really amazing rooms. As I prepare to introduce you to Hannah, I will share with you 2 quotes that come to mind. One is by the anonymous artist Banksy. Art should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. This is one of my own personal North Stars. When life throws me new data to contend with, I have to process. Am I disturbed? What specifically disturbed me? Okay. Then I have to sit and allow myself the space sometimes to not have to do anything. Am I comforted? What specifically comforted me? And allow those to sit as well next to what disturbed me. Do nothing right now. Just let what you just saw mull around in your mind, heart, and body. In the coming minutes, days, weeks, or even years, what is particularly special is that we have an opportunity today to have more insights and information given to us as we sit and process through not only what Hannah, as the filmmaker, is going to share with us, but our panel of 4 distinguished academics, authors, and executives. The second quote is a Native American proverb. No tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. Again, I cannot help but be inspired by the risk-taking, vulnerability, and talent of Hannah Bonecutter. In the arts realm, she is an actress and model and spoken word poet and filmmaker. Within filmmaking, she has served in roles of executive producer, writer, director, costume designer, production designer. So when those judges were calling out, "Oh, great costume, oh, great lighting," yep, that was her too. She has acted on several film projects here in Chicago. She has served in major network television series and independent narratives. She's also executive produced more of her own film projects, in one being a feature-length documentary entitled Live as the Majority, and she engages her poetry skills when it comes to performing her own original spoken word poetry throughout Chicagoland at various events and venues and open mics. She balances her artistry among her other careers, which is a licensed educator. She just got her Master's of Public Health in May of 2021. And also a professional organizing business known as Bonecutter, LLC. So, when it comes to her activism, she serves in diverse leadership roles of 4 separate nonprofit organizations in Chicago, whether it's teaching students in a classroom, professionally organizing a client's home, or acting on the television screen. She strives to always be achieving this mission of improving this world to become a better place. So, ladies, gentlemen, people, Hannah Grace Bonecutter.
Hello, everyone. It is amazing to be here with y'all today. Thank you. Let's give a round of really quick for Tony. She's doing a phenomenal job. Phenomenal. My goodness. Thank you guys so much. Whew. How do y'all feel after that? That's Tony said in her breath, right? After watching that, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. Man, still letting it marinate. And I'm the filmmaker, right? And still, every time I watch it, I'm re-hit, kind of like another rainfall or another hurricane or something. So I want you guys to think about your initial reaction to what you just saw, and feelings that it may have elicited within you, emotions, certain words or phrases that may come to mind. Think about that, and we want to hear from you. What are those? Feel free, I know, but we're all here. Just shout it out. Shout it out. Want to hear this. What words, initial, and for some, maybe it's shock. If so, just say it. Maybe it's disgust. Maybe it's empathy. But please share. You can just shout it out.
Reality.
Reality. Okay. That's what you're gonna say. Reality, real. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Loss of innocence.
Loss of innocence.
Yeah.
I like that. Wow. Yes.
Professional and unprofessional.
Professional and unprofessional. Should that have been the title? Professional versus wow, okay. Trending. Duality? Duality. Hope. Okay. Hope. Perspective. And what was that? Broken. Is there healing? Will there be healing? Who does the healing? Unfair.
I was struggling with which side do I take?
Conflicted. We're conflicted. We're conflicted about the internal conflict of the conflict that we're conflicted about. That's right. We're conflicted. Yes.
Judgmental.
Judging. Strength. Paradox.
Rebel.
Ooh. It's being a rebel. Starting a rebellion. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm sure there's many more thoughts and emotions that you just had and that will likely stay with you today, days from now, weeks from now, as I've heard others that have had the chance to see this. So sit with that. But at this time, we're going to hear what the reactions and far more were from our expert panelists. So I am so excited to welcome them on stage. Without further ado, I need to bring up Alvin Bibbs, Mr. Alvin Bibbs Sr., author, Reverend, and founding president of the Justice Journey Alliance. In all of Alvin's roles, he has acquired decades of experience taking direct action to address structural injustice and systemic racism. Specifically within the Justice Journey Alliance, people are brought together across racial lines to build relationships and to encourage community-based and solution-driven initiatives to address inequities in our country. Thank you, Alvin. Next, we have Ms. Jessica Pickens, founding Vice President of Operations at Complete Care Management Partners, a minority and women-owned community-based care management company focused on decreasing health disparities by changing the trajectory of chronic diseases. Jessica is a detail-oriented leader with more than 20 years combined experience in government relations, community relations, administration, and operations. Next, we have Dr. David Stovall, professor in the Department of Black Studies and in the Department of Criminology, Law, and Justice at the University of Illinois at Chicago. In addition to conducting research on critical race theory, Dr. Stovall works with students, families, educators, and concerned community members to abolish the school-prison nexus. Last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Sonia Chapman, author, educator, and certified etiquette consultant. Sonia is the founder of Chicago Protocol and Etiquette Consulting and Company, a Chicago-based consulting business that teaches individuals to empower themselves by refining and enhancing their social skills. One more round of applause for all of our panelists. They're about to drop some knowledge and some wisdom. Woo! All right, and don't forget to turn your mics on, panelists. Turn them on, just flip that switch. You guys know how tech stuff can go. So, to all my panelists, to begin. Whew. Now, and I'm gonna tell you, they've watched this film a few times, okay? So they've had some time to sit on it, really mull it over, you know. What element of the film most resonated with you and why?
I'm gonna jump with ladies first.
No, ladies. He's gonna put him on the spot.
Okay, fine. For me, it's reality. I've lived both of those aspects, the internal conflict that presents, in my opinion, every person has to make that decision. Every person, no matter of your upbringing or where you start from, in my opinion, you kind of have to deal with a good side versus a bad side. Because even if you're raised in an environment that was fine, no issues, no poverty, no money, inevitably you're gonna encounter some folks that open you up to some other things that are not legal or this or that. And so for me, it reminded me of my own personal internal struggle and how I was going down one side at one point, and then when I had to come to a decision and decide who I wanted to be more permanently and for the long haul for my life. And it reminded me not to be so judgmental at this point, because now that I've kind of, once I made my decision and I crossed over, you can forget where you came from. You can forget when you were in, that former period. And remembering that it's important to kind of keep that top of mind, particularly if my goal is to always help people and reach back and do better. Then again, not being judgmental, and realizing that what you thought you left, you still have a trick bag that you have to operate in and navigate on a daily basis, particularly in corporate America, particularly no matter what's going on, there's always ground to be gained. And so it's important to keep that top of mind.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Jessica just said. She and I were talking in the back, and the reality piece, I can appreciate that. I work with a lot of at-risk girls, and for some of my girls that are at risk, that becomes their norm. Not that it's normal, but that has become their norm because some of them have their environment, they're becoming a product of that environment. And so for them, I had a student, and I was sharing with Hannah also in the back that I let her watch the film, and she was just like, oh wow. She's like, I could really do something else with my life, like almost like didn't even know if that was an option for her, because this is what I'm used to. I've watched my mom do this, and my mother did her eyesight, she was successful, because success looked like we had a roof over our head, we had clothes on our back, and so that looks, nice, that looks, but not realizing that there is an option, that, you can do something else. And just to see her light bulb go on after sharing the film with her, she was like, oh, Miss Chapman, oh my God, I didn't even know. Now for me, I'm like, girl, you didn't know that, but for her, that her normal was, what she had been used to seeing. So thank you for sharing that, because I too, I try not to be judgmental, and I look at both sides, and everybody have a story. Everybody has a story.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that by saying, first and foremost, I think everybody here would understand and believe that the film was absolutely outstanding. Yes. All right, can we get a hand clap on that first and foremost? The second point I want to make is I just want to affirm our dear sister Hannah for being brave enough to enter into this space, because it raises the question that many African American women of color have to wrestle with on an every single day basis. It's the moral dilemma between what's right and what's wrong, and how should I go about living my life daily. At the same time, when I saw the film, the first word that came out of my mouth was deep. Now, I'm a product of the Cabrini Green housing development on the near north side of Chicago. And I wish that this film would have been released generations ago. Yes. Generations ago. Because of the impact, because of the narrative, because of the reality of what young women are experiencing and dealing with every single day of their life. And there's very few that are willing to be brave enough to enter into that space of what's real misinformation, and also just understanding space. How do I go about survival in this space and in this thing called life as a woman? And so this film just pulls back the layers on all of these issues and then some. And at the same time, when you're watching the film, you can't help but think about the corporate pimps that are actually navigating the streams of those that's on the puppet. And so we have to understand the reality of all of these things that's going on, that's being portrayed in this film, but at the same time, are we willing to engage in the conversation to get on the solution side of what was being exposed in minstrels and puppets?
Indeed, peace, y'all. One of the things that comes up for me, and somebody said it in the crowd, 3 things: conflict, struggle, and a break, right? Because you are in this conflict, right? The minstrel is dancing for white supremacy, right? The puppet now sees white supremacy and is trying to figure it out. Then you have a break. You will say to yourself that this will not work, and that it's imperative that you have to do something different. And a lot of times we see folks who don't make the break. So your film, Hannah, to me, is showing the necessity of making the break, right? Because the cost is your soul, right? So, and that thing, you know, sometimes when we say that to folks, it sounds so ethereal, right? But the soul is, you know when it ain't right, right? And you know when you tap dancing for white supremacy, right? Or as my uncle say, you know when you cooning, right? So now you have to have a break from that, because if you don't break from that early enough, the cost is death, right? And not just, because you can still be walking around and be dead. And I think that's the thing that we have to grapple with, right? That struggle, the conflict, and the break. And if we don't make that break, then we continue to die to the minstrelsy or be puppeteered.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know about you all, but just from all that right there, as soon as I walk off the stage and this is over, I'm writing down notes in my phone. I'm about to look up some articles. Thank you. Dr. David Stovall, I wanna continue with you in thinking about the critical race theory. So, from a critical race theory perspective, where exactly does this pervasive conflict of brains versus beauty within women of color, particularly a Black woman, stem from? And is there a hypothesis within critical race theory that you believe may be most effective for creating solutions for this?
Definitely, thank you for that question. And for folks who aren't familiar with the term and see it on television and watch too much Fox News, let's say what it is not, right? Critical race theory is not teaching people how to be racist. Let's start there, right? Instead, critical race theory says that the United States is founded on 3 things: white supremacy, slavery, and wrongful land appropriation and genocide, right? That's in its foundation. So now, when we talk about what is the extension, or as a sister by the name of Sadia Hartman says, what are the afterlives of slavery? Right, so how do we see slavery in its current form? The United States incarcerates more people in the world, right, than any other country. It also incarcerates more Black women than any country in the world 15 times over. Right? So the largest incarcerator of Black women is the United States. So now when we start to think about this, and you start to think about conflict, and now this question around normalcy, right? Because this is the whole thing around white supremacy, right? It fools us, right? They say, you know, the COVID situation, I can't wait till we get back to normal. Well, normal was the problem. Right? Let's start there, right? So now, normalcy is the afterlife of slavery. Normalcy is saying that I would rather see you die than to live, and I will create every institution that is reflective of you dying before you live it. So now when we talk about black women, and you talk about things like incarceration rates, you talk about wealth disparity, right? You talk about the median wealth of black women in the United States compared to the richest groups of folks not being more than a couple of $100, right? So when you put that in that context, critical race theory says we've been here for a long time. To what extent are we willing to engage it? And to what extent are we willing to change the realities? So we're asking a question of political will, but we're also asking a question of personal understanding and collective will, right? So this is for folks who are going through struggling with the minstrelsy and the puppetry, now looking out of themselves and saying, when I break from this, the other part of the responsibility is to pull the other folks that I'm seeing go through it and saying to them, look, it's okay. I've been there too. Some of y'all remember this scene that we were talking about, Felicia Rashad. And you know, movie interpretations of plays and choreo poems aren't always the greatest, but there's a scene in For Colored Girls. And For Colored Girls who attempted suicide when the rainbow is enough, right? In Tazaki Shange's play. And there's a part in there where she looks at Thandie Newton's character and she says, I know you. I know you because I used to be you. And I know that in being you, you're gonna have to make a decision. Right? So that thing around, so it's not about, I think, the long answer to that, it's not about admonishing folks, right? It's really around understanding. And what is the, if we understand folks, then what is our commitment to change our condition?
Right. Collectively, right? I love how you talked about and said how it is our responsibility to see ourselves in another. And I know Tony earlier talked about humanity and how key that is to bringing about change in anything. And so that pull-in of each other, wherever we may be in our minstreldom, in our puppetry, and whatever it may be during this normal, it's an effort of all together. Thank you, Dr. Stovall. Ms. Jessica Pickens. Both the minstrel and the puppet discussed financial challenges they had and what they did to overcome them best they could in various ways. As a leader in healthcare management, can you please share how finances and socioeconomic status are tied to health outcomes, health disparities, and access to healthcare?
Well,
That's a lot.
It is a lot,
Unpack
but it's almost a softball question, actually, because I mean, the reality is that those that have access to stuff more than those who do not. I mean, so the first thing out the gate is the reality of whether it's financial disparity, you know, neighborhood disparity, access disparity, it's all rolled into one. If I have a job and I have insurance and I'm able to get to see the doctor, it's an automatic that I'm gonna fare better than someone who doesn't. If I have the $20 copay, and so I can not be embarrassed and not go to my appointment because I don't have a $5, $10, $20 copay, I'm gonna go. If I know that urgent care is going to treat me with respect, and no matter how many times I go, I got the $20 to pay it, I'm going to go. So I'm going to do better at taking care of myself. When you look at people who do not have insurance, or who are, you know, who have Medicaid as their form of insurance, and therefore are stigmatized by a racist system, a very racist healthcare system, who automatically insinuates that who they think you are because you're on Medicaid, when they don't know anything about you. You know, my first insurance plan, with my first child, I was on Medicaid, and you get treated a certain way, and again, you still don't have access to the same level of doctors and same types of specialists, because certain doctors won't take Medicaid as a form of payment because the fee reimbursement schedule is so minimal. even though your healthcare institutions and your hospitals stand happily in line to get their state dollars because they're supposed to be providing access to low-income neighborhoods. So it is awful, because the reality is that what we see is that there has been no progress made. The healthcare disparities that exist when it comes to disease and health for Black people, what it was 20 years ago, it still is today. And it's exponential. And COVID has shown a brighter light on that reality, because of the number of people of color and low-income folks who are dying faster because of the comorbidities, because we've done nothing to improve health disparities in diabetes, in asthma, in renal disease, to make sure that folks are able to have access for longer life, when the only difference most of the time is your financial, your socioeconomic factor, the social determinants of health. If I gotta walk through 3 blocks of gang territory to pick up my blood pressure medicine, guess what I'm not gonna go pick up?
Right.
You know, wait on it, bruh, right? So if I don't have a way to get to my doctor's appointment, and I might have a $5 copay that day, but if I don't have a way to get there, I cannot go. If I have a job where I do not have PTO, if I miss one more day of work and I get fired, if my fever's 105, guess where I'm going? I'm going to work. I can't afford to get fired, so I can't afford to try to take time off to try to see, why do I have 105 fever? I'm gonna hold my cough in, and I'm gonna go to work, and then guess what I do? I infect everybody in the kitchen. Well, whatever else, what I had when I go. But these are the realities that we still see all day, every day right now, with what we do, because we do care management, and we do care management for Medicaid health plans. And so it's a reality that has not been dealt with. It has not been fairly addressed, and we have a very long way to go, and it's impacting people's lives all day, every day, continuously in 2021.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Jessica Pickens. And I want to ask a follow-up in terms of the comorbidities, right, and these chronic diseases that I know your company addresses. What has been done, or what has not yet been done and should be done to address these comorbidities in a way that provides positive cushion in terms of still the disparities in wealth that determine health outcomes? So like what can be done, or what is maybe being done to address? So, and I heard you say like diabetes, right? So maybe what is can you speak on that?
Well, so first of all, if you don't know how to talk to Big Mama and help her understand that she got a problem with her sugar, and if she doesn't take this pill, and if she doesn't do A, B, and C, then what's gonna happen in about 6 months, she's gonna be hooked up to a dialysis machine that she's gonna have to navigate. And so when you start, but what people do is assume that our community is not able to be educated enough to understand. But if you bring information to people in a way that they can receive it, they can handle it. The problem is that that's not what the system has been willing to do. We want to have Big Mama come in, see her at the ER, say a whole bunch of terms and words that makes her head spin, when all she's trying to do is make sure that she's able to get back home to take care of her great-granddaughter in the morning, because her granddaughter helps pay the rent, and she got to be at work at 7 a.m., and you fooling with me at 11 o'clock at night. And those are realities that generationally people have to deal with. So what needs to be done is a reality check on the system to bring information, to trust the fact that people can handle information and knowledge.
Yes.
And just because I don't get it, or you gotta give it to me a different way, you know, you got your fancy medical terms and hoorah, you made it through medical school. That was my goal, didn't happen to be me, but at the end of the day, you trust that people are able to handle information, and it's the respect. We don't respect, healthcare in this country does not respect people enough to think that if I've managed to survive America as a Black person for 70 years,
Come on.
I can understand if you would just talk to me in plain English. Listen, if you would do this, If you would just cut out fried chicken at least 3 times a week. You can have it once. Let's do this thing. But fresh fruits and vegetables, let's do this. Let's set you up with a farmer's market. How can we work together to make sure, hey, did you know that Medicaid, actually these MCOs, they're required to provide transportation to your doctor's appointment? We can make sure you can get, and they can help you get your prescription. Did you know we can send your prescription? You don't have to walk through the game infested neighborhood. But if you just stay on this medicine for this amount of time, we can avoid dialysis, which means we can, it is being respectful enough to talk to people who have navigated all the nonsense, and there's some words I'm not going to say on this, but you think that they can't handle information in a way that if you educate them, that people typically want to do better for themselves.
Right.
But there's an assumption that I'm cool being sick, and it just is what it is, and that's just not the truth.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Pickens. Education, right? All right. Mr. Alvin Bibbs Sr., as a justice and racial reconciliation expert, can you please discuss the primary injustices you observed in this film that Minstrel and/or puppet endures? What are some potential solutions to stopping these injustices?
Well, it's a great question, and thanks for asking. I would start out by saying the first injustice is alienation. You know, we don't spend a lot of time talking about that particular term, but every single day, you know, women are being alienated against in so many different ways. And it's crystal clear, what does that lead to? That leads to a level of discrimination. It's a level of discrimination within the workplace, it's discrimination within you know, how we roam the society on a regular basis. Well, but discriminating against women is something that is real. That leads to a level of inequalities. You know, right now within America, we have a number of DEI officers that are being hired in corporate offices all across North America. And the reality is, right now today, the highest percentage of those that are being hired in these roles are women. Ask yourself the question, why are women being placed in these roles? Because those that are sitting in the C-suite that happens to be men believe that they can, again, control the woman that's leading the DEI enterprise for their corporation. So therefore, if we can place more women in these roles, then what happens within corporate America, they're not going to be held accountable in addressing the racial equity issues that we're so passionate about. And it's going to continue to create such a level of disparity and unequal playing field when it comes to those that are trying to be elevated into these positions of power and influence that's controlling the landscape of our world in which we live in today. And then the other major injustice is racism. It's racism. Racism, friends, is an economic issue. And until we get behind the layers of the economics within our society, these issues are going to continue to persist on a daily basis. We got to pull back the layers on the economic side of what's happening within our world today. Now, here's the other side of this that I want to point out to you, is that women have power.
Yes, indeed.
When you think of the strongest gender in society, it ain't men. It ain't men. Now, the fellas in the house, if you think you are, you've been drinking that Kool-Aid. You need to put that glass down, leave it alone. It ain't working. Yeah, that's right. But the power structure within this world derives from our women. And this goes as far back as slavery. You see? And so we have to recognize and speak truth to power. We have to speak truth to the injustices. We have to speak truth to the racism that is so prevalent within our society. Everybody talks about that we now have been experiencing this racial pandemic since the public execution of George Floyd. Yeah, I said it, public execution. But this pandemic has been going on for multiple generations. And what happened in the George Floyd situation, we began to pull back the layers. And it woke up the world, not just North America. It woke up the world. And when you look at those that were out there protesting and making their voices be known and heard, it was women that was leading the charge. It was women. Because our society continues to strip our brothers of their power and influence. But those within the mainstream of society, for some reason or another, will open a crack in that door and trust a woman. So therefore, we have to continue to empower our women to leverage that crack in the door so that others can come through. Now, you may be in that office as a DEI officer and don't believe you have the resources or the authority to make decisions. You are wrong. Because you do have the authority to make decisions. You have an opportunity to change the culture of that corporation or institution that you're a part of and ensure that the racism and the injustices begin to cease. And brothers will follow your lead because you know why? We're ready. We're ready.
We're ready. I'm ready for that. Thank you, Mr. Alvin Bibbs, Miss Sonia Chapman. In previous generations, etiquette courses were relegated to the privileged classes, inter- and intra-racially. Can you please speak to why this was the case and the importance etiquette still plays in society today?
Yes. Good question, very good question, and a loaded question, might I add. Very good question. First of all, I just want to say thank you for saying that about women. I just love that.
Yes.
Women, we give life. Yes, we give life. But, you know, let me just say this about the word etiquette and why, you know, in the 17th century and the 18th century, it was so prevalent for the high society. It's because it was all about dining. So even now, if you think about it, when you hear the word etiquette, every time I go somewhere and I hear that, people's like, oh, let me make sure I'm eating the proper way.
Right.
Well, etiquette is not just about the way you eat, but back then in the 17th and the 1800s, yes, the high society, because they were dining. They had the money to go out and sit down and eat, you know, and it was all strictly about dining. Etiquette is rooted around 4 core principles, and that is respect. So I hear the panelists talk about respect. It is about being considerate. It is about being honest and being tactful. And if you operate around those 4, you're exercising good etiquette. Very, very good etiquette. And it's not about a socio-economical status wherever you are. We all look different up here. All of us look different. But it's about me understanding and respecting, being considerate of you, you know, being tactful when I talk to Dr. David, being tactful in my language and how I speak to one another. So, you know, I think then the way the word etiquette was used, the pioneers of etiquette, the Post. Anybody know any of the Post people? Have y'all ever met them? Emily Post, Peter Post, Peggy Post? You never even met those people, right? But you know they were like the pioneers of etiquette. So they established these rules and said, this is a set of rules that you should go by. Well, that looks different if I'm coming from the hood. That looks a little different. You know, I don't even understand that language. But if you stay around those core principles about being respectful, considerate, tactful, and honest, you are operating in good etiquette. So what does that really mean? It means that we have to start showing manners, good manners to one another. Being kind. Manners is all about behavior. So I think I may have not even answered the question, Hannah. Repeat the question. I done went off. I get excited about this topic. I don't even know if I answered the question or not.
It's all right. It's all right.
Because I want to remove that stigma of it's just about dining. Like, you know, the language look different. It looks different based on socioeconomic. It looks different. It looks different how we interact with the younger generation right now. So when I'm talking to younger generation right now, I don't even go into the whole, you know, I'm an etiquette consultant. You know, I model the behavior for them. I model it and I let them see I'm going to respect you, because here's the golden rule. We all want to be treated, you know, with respect. All of us want to be treated with respect. So that's what it's really all about. So for this generation, reaching this generation of today, we're going to have to really model the behavior we want them to emulate. And that's going to be being patient, being kind. You know, and speaking sometimes their language. And I love the simplicity of, you know, sometimes we have to use all of these big words. And, you know, no, speak the language they can understand. But while you're doing that, Be respectful, be considerate, be tactful.
Thank you, Sonia. And you definitely did answer the question, and then some, as you know, which I love. I just learned about 4 lessons right there. I don't know about y'all. Those 4 core principles. And with that, so does this mean that it's so important because etiquette based in those 4 rooted principles, you can not only communicate better with another, but achieve goals better with another, and hopefully impact change, right? And because that's the goal for a lot. I know that's the goal globally right now with what's going on with this pandemic, right? We need that to change. We need these current normalcies to change so that such things do not occur again, but then our old normal is gone. So thank you.
And I just want to add this real quickly that, the times that we're in right now, everybody frustrated. Everybody mad, everybody is upset, because we don't know what's the next. You turn on the news, you get partial truth, you don't know what to believe. So when I see somebody and you're having a bad day, it's not personal towards me because I haven't even seen you. I didn't wake up with you, so I don't take that personal. So I'm learning and I'm teaching my young women that I work with, don't take everything so personal because you don't know what you have battled getting here today. I don't know what you all have battled getting here today. We don't know what goes on in somebody else's world. So guess what? What I have to always do is exercise those core principles. And I want to be respectful. I want to, be considerate. I want to be tactful. I want to be honest. And sometimes, we have to think about how we're communicating. Like you said, you want to impact. If you want to do that, model the behavior. You model the behavior.
Thank you.
There's an old saying, treat people how you want to be treated.
You want to be treated. That's a golden rule. Absolutely.
Kindergarten. Dr. Stovall. Marinate, right? Let them all marinate. In a perfect world, what tangible steps would non-Black, Indigenous, people of color, also known as BIPOC, women and men take to help dismantle the oppressive system of racism from their areas of influence?
And I think one of the things is really acknowledging that it exists, right? This is the battle that we're seeing with critical race theory in school. Like when folks come to school board meetings and say, we don't want this to happen, and then all you do is reverse the question, they don't know what to do, right? So you ask them, okay, well, what do you want to be taught? What do you want to be taught? And they just kind of go, well, not that. And it's like, come on, y'all. Like, what is it that we want to think about? And I think this is a lesson from the Black Panther Party, right? It says that actually we saw in the original social media posts by Omotomiti, Alicia Garza, and Patricia Cullors. When they talked about Black Lives Mattering, they said, until Black people are free, no one on this planet will experience freedom. So now, I think that's the point of solidarity, right? So solidarity is saying we may not agree, but we understand that there is a justice condition that we're all trying to reach, right? That if one of us is contained, is ostracized, is alienated, then we are not free, right? So I think this thing around really pushing us to understand freedom, not just because the United States fools us. We think that individualism means freedom, and it doesn't. Because you can be individually cool. I was listening to a Drake song today.
Okay.
Right? Drizzy was talking about how he was in a jet, and then how he was going, and then how, somebody tried to front on him, and then he had to tell them about themselves. I was like, okay, Drizzy, all right. But, and I'm saying Drizzy like I know him, right?
He might.
But in thinking about that, in the United States, at any given moment, that can be taken from him, right? And what you're left with is the loss of those things, those material things that you've become attached to. Freedom is a disattachment from material things.
Ooh, yes, it is.
Right? Freedom says that you are able to engage folks with respect, with understanding. You are able to talk to folks You're able to engage folks because you see yourself in that other person. And you know that that other person is the key conduit in many cases of saving your life because white supremacy won't. So now when we think about that and we have to grapple with that, it's harder to engage and say you see your freedom in someone else, and now your job is to free all of us. Right? And that's a different, because we are in this material world where we struggle with these things, right? And not having donor paid bills is real, right? And being in a school that doesn't have a library and you got kindergartners through fifth graders is real, right? So now we gotta look at that, and we're in a city, y'all, where the mayor is trying to do a civil forfeiture on gang members, where there aren't any really gangs. And you're like, damn, y'all, what is the thought process there, right? Because we get fooled. We get fooled by representation. You got your first openly gay mayor who doesn't really appear that she really is feeling black folks, right? Now, I know that's unpopular, but I have to say that because in all of these instances, it's like, man, just because you look a certain way does not mean that you are committed to freedom. What is our grandmother's wisdom? All skin folk ain't what? Right? If I gotta explain that, we all should leave.
That's right.
Right? So this thing around being that clear is gonna take that clarity to be able to understand what that freedom is. Because when we are grappling and we get so caught up and attached to material possessions, that moves us further away from freedom.
Right.
It moves us more towards minstrelsy through mimicry.
Right. Ooh.
Right? So
Somebody write that down. Somebody write that down.
we have to be clear about that, right? Because mimicry is fooling us.
It's fooling us.
Right? It's saying that you supposed to look. Trump showed that with white folks real clear. Right? He was like, look, I don't rock with y'all, I don't mess with y'all, but I'm gonna get y'all to believe something that you will go on January 6th to rob your own house. Right? And they in there too, boy. They was like, you're so fraud. according to their own folks that they wouldn't listen to because you're so keyed up on what you fear. Right? So that thing around, so now we gotta think about how do we disassociate ourselves from mimicry? How do we get about the business of freedom? And the last thing, understanding that that's real hard work.
Real hard work.
Right? I don't wanna lie to y'all about that, right? Because it's hard work to do that. You gotta ask some real tough questions about yourself. Right? You gotta make a decision on what you're going to depart from. When the world rewards you for clinging to it.
Right.
Right? So we have to think about that in real ways.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Stovall. And that just gave me an epiphany in terms of the film, because with freedom, you're absolute, that true freedom is being able to engage one another, no matter what the background, what they're wearing, how they may speak their dialect. That is freedom. And those characters in Minstrel versus Puppet were not able to talk. They were not even able to be in the same space. And this film is the only way. I believe I figured that they could. And so perhaps for me, and this is not my time to speak, but that was freedom. And I hope that is perpetuated in reality and not just on the screen.
On that point, I would just
Yes.
piggyback on that, because this really stood out to me about the film, and you're really hitting it, is that within our society today, both characters, when you think about women within corporate America, women from that has the neighborhood persona, etc., there hasn't been a space created where these two characters can actually have conversation to speak with one another. In a free-flowing environment where judgment has been suspended just by entering the room. Because the reality of this film was the cat fight. Okay, dealing with self-righteousness. Okay, who's gonna get the upper hand here? Who's right? Which way is the right to freedom? Whose way is the right to self-sustainability? Whose way is the way to economic prosperity? Which is the way? But often what happens is, within our society, we continue to alienate ourselves from one another, from that dialogue. Because we feel hampered by and hindered by society saying that's not cool for those that wear the suit to hang out with those that wear the jeans. It's not acceptable, see? But we know within our community that it takes a village. No one that comes out of the hood comes out of the hood on their own. See, you may not be able to tell by me sitting here on this stage, but I've been shot at too many times to count, been beaten unconscious, 357 Magnum on the side of my neck, the whole 9 yards. But there was a guy by the name of Dr. King that commissioned and blessed my life, that started me on my way. And it was those within my community that saw something within me that began to protect me from the environment. And through that process, I was able to transcend the environment. But here's the thing that we cannot lose sight of. We are called to support one another. That's a mandate. And we hear these words from this thing called a good book, that when justice prevails, it brings joy to the righteous. So when you experience justice, I should experience justice. Justice shouldn't have a color. Justice shouldn't have a color. But in this day and age that we live in, justice has a color, and it doesn't look like mine. And that's the whole dilemma, Doctor, when we talk about this critical race theory, because the founders of critical race theory said we want the law to represent those that are now free that represented the same slave masters. So therefore, now we're changing and flipping the script of the narrative in regards to what justice truly means. We got to continue to create that space where everybody feels that freedom of speech matters. We got to lift each other up along the way, because we got too many folks out here that are falling and dropping by the wayside because we got too many cat fights going on, and we got too many folks that are now in offices that don't want to come down and hang with sisters in the hood. And that's why we're losing the battle. The battle starts within our own neighborhoods, our own families, and it starts with us. Stop looking for the excuses. Stop looking for the excuses. Make it happen on your own with those around you that truly care about the plight of the people, and not the process, and not a political system that don't give a rip about you.
Thank you so much, Alvin Bibb Seniors. A lot of truth in that, in all of this. Ms. Jessica Pickens, in your expert observations from the four lenses of government, healthcare, science, and community relations, of the arguments each character presented, which one best intersects all four of those lenses?
It's actually a tie.
Okay.
The reality is that the characters are more alike than what they pause for a moment to realize. They both hustlers. At the end of the day, you can be in a cat suit or a pinstripe suit. It's all about your hustle. And it's innate to some people, and it looks different in different ways. But again, if you're a person of color in corporate America, if you're really doing something and making moves, you are hustling.
Right, okay.
If I had to steal food to help feed my family, my younger brothers and sisters, while my mom was at work, and I caught a case and I got a background, so now I'm limited to what I can do. Survival mode is survival mode. And so assuming that someone, that the things that they're struggling with was all because they're a bad person is a big mistake that's made many of the time. And the system is very unforgiving. And so when you're looking at folks that are out here doing what they do, whether it's a girl using her body, which used to be, you know, before social media, I thank the Lord it didn't exist when I was in college. I'm just here to tell y'all. I wouldn't be sitting up here right now. I'm 100% positive that I was a clown. And I am so glad that there was not mechanisms to capture all that crap that you can just put out there and never take back. And it is just tearing our young people up. But these cats out here, young women and men who are on their hustle, whether that hustle is using their body, their looks, their talent in ways that we don't feel are healthy, and we judge folks, but they're using that hustle to take care of themselves, their family, and you're looking at guys on the corner and you're looking at what they're doing. The adverse effects I don't agree with, I understand, but what I'm saying is that selling drugs is a daggum business. And they got skills. And there are skills. And so when you start judging and you don't pause to look at how much alike are we really, and how do we have a conversation about, yo, if you've been doing this for X number of years and you ain't sitting in nobody's state or federal prison, I need to talk to you for a minute. The minstrel and the puppet cannot exchange an effective dialogue if I'm so built up on my assumptions and perceptions, which, by the way, if anybody takes 15 seconds, but for the grace of God, been there, done that. Again, like straight up, been there, done that. And so if you just take a moment and stop and breathe, and so just because I've made it to a certain point doesn't mean that I now look down my nose at anybody that looks different or what. We've got to stop and find the commonality. So actually, they both intersect all four of those areas, because when you're talking about government and you talk about politics and you talk about community relations and you talk about healthcare, there is hustle and corporate all interspersed throughout all of that.
Right.
And so the representation and the reality of how do we have an honest conversation to get to the root of, if everyone's come and go truly, as you described freedom, if I am seeing that the best life I can live is not just about the stuff I get and what I do. It's about how is everybody else around me doing. My perspective completely shifts and changes. And it causes me to go, yeah, I got the car I want. I'm in a safe neighborhood. I'm comfortable. God, thank you. My crib is, but if I then look down the street and the park that's across the street from my house or that I walk in, I'm looking at these cats. It's the same dudes on the same bench. And then we driving down the street and, oh, he must have got a couple dollars because he's walking to look. Then I start to go, why is he living on the park bench in the park across from my street? And do I care? Am I willing to do something about it? Is there something that can be done about it? Now, people gotta want help. People gotta want to change. But if dude is comfortable with that, then am I judging him? Or am I going, what's up? How you doing? What's going on? Or am I just going, ooh, every time I walk past?
Right.
So it's all these perceptions and assumptions that typically prevent us from being able to be honest again about, if you just take 1 minute and be honest with yourself, have that honest conversation in the mirror, you're not cracked up to be all that you think that you are most of the time, because you done just about as much as everybody else done did. Might not have been exactly the same, and most of the time you just didn't get caught.
Right. Just when put on blast. Jessica, I love how you really highlighted how both of them on both quote unquote ends of the spectrum employ all of those tactics and all of those skills.
If you don't think that A person who is on, just call it a community street hustle, if you think they ain't, politics is everywhere.
Rare, everywhere.
It's community relations. It takes community relations. If you got 5 followers on Instagram, you doing community relations. You can have 5, you can have 5 million. It's community relations. Politics is in the church. Politics simply means who you got relationship with and how are you using those relationships and networks to navigate where you trying to go and helping other people, and what does that look like? Oh, I'm gonna talk to you over here because yeah, I can do this right now because in about 6 months I'm gonna be back to holler at you. Politics.
Right, right.
Your pastor does it, your mama does it, your sister does it.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
The skill sets are the same, and that's where we miss it.
That's correct.
They're employed differently, and people like to lie to themselves and think that it looks better in one setting than the others.
Right, and then not respected across the spectrum.
That is correct. But here's the thing. This is why people don't want to leave the hood, because the hood respects it in the hood.
That's, there it is. Yep, yes ma'am. I hope y'all picking up the knowledge and the wisdom and all of this that's being dropped. So looking at time, I want to close to all my wonderful panelists with this question. What impact do you envision this film and the energy around it, including this conversation we just had, having in the world, in society, after this event?
In Islam, there's a concept called jihad. We make a false assumption based on what we see in the news, right? Because they think about jihad as a form of terrorism. But in Islam, jihad is referenced as the battle you have with yourself for your soul. And when you start to think about the usage of this particular film, it's an excellent way to discuss internal conflict. And when you start to think about that internal conflict, now what eases us into asking real questions of ourselves for improvement, collective understanding, and working with other people, right, as part of the freedom dream. So I think that's really important moving forward, because it dispels this notion of looking down on folks, thinking that you're better than folks, but it actually asks the conflicts that we're having in ourselves and how we wrestle with them.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Stonewall. Absolutely. Internal conflict.
I would hope that, to me, the edutainment industry that you are creating here, that you're operating in, provides an opportunity for people who may not ever look at engaging this sort of conversation. They have a shoe in, they have a way to do that. So to me, it's very important that we figure out how do we create more venues and opportunity for folks from all across the spectrum to be able to see this and then do just this. Have a conversation about it. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you? What does this trigger inside of you? Mm-hmm. How does this make you feel? Mm-hmm. Because when you do that and you find something that then it's not me directly looking at you and saying, what's wrong with you? What's going on? We're talking about this piece of art, and we're having a conversation that brings out our perspectives and our thoughts, but then helps us begin to break down some walls and perceptions in a way, in my opinion, that when you don't create the forum for that to happen, it's not happening, period. It's not happening. Right. And so my hope is that you are able to continue on. We are able, as all of us who have obviously committed to support you and stand by, we have an obligation. How can we create additional opportunities? For me, again, I got a boatload of kids. They all 20-somethings and all the way, but that's if we don't start figuring out how to, those of us who have kind of been there, done that, to allow an open opportunity and a space to engage young people who, a lot of this social media stuff, to me, they're hurt, now you get engaged by how popular are you, by the number of likes somebody happens to click on. I mean, it's a whole nother sort of situation that can lead to a whole larger amount of problems emotionally and mentally that are taking our kids out like faster than we can imagine right now. Having this sort of form and opportunity to have a dialogue about the realities of an internal battle is super, super important. So I think that, we've just gotta keep this going.
Thank you. And I also think, like you said, having that conversation, starting with the conversation. I'm in the inner city schools and I work with different groups of young ladies. I never even knew what stiff weave was. I didn't even know. So I had girls mad at another girl because her weave was stiff. I'm like, what is that? Not judging, I just don't know what it is. And why are we mad about that? Why are you concerned that her weave is stiff? Why is that important? But I think for us to come together and start having a conversation, because this generation, and I want to say this, and real quick, if you just allow me, like 30 seconds. I went to college in 1989 to Grambling State University, and I remember being on the road with my dad and my mom, and we were passing through Mississippi. My father and my mother were born, raised in Mississippi, went through segregation, went through all of that. So me, 1989, I'm saying loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and I remember we got pulled over, and this young white officer, who's really, my father is his senior probably 2 times over, he kept acknowledging my dad as boy. And he's like, boy, you do this, boy. And I'm in the car, and I'm just knocking on the, because I'm saying loud, I'm black and I'm proud. And I can see my father looking, because again, 89, there were no cameras. There were no phones, And my point is saying that my dad got in the car, and Sonia, don't cry. Because I cry every time I tell the story, because God rest my dad's soul, he's been gone for 6 years. But I remember the lesson he told me. He said, Sonia, I said, Daddy, why did you let that man talk to you? I'm going to college, why did you? He said, Sonia, it was more important for me to get you to school than to fight that battle. We're in a time now, this generation, we're going after battles. And we're fighting these battles. We're tackling it. We have the means. We now have the knowledge. Some of the walls, some of the barriers are coming down now. So we got to start having these open conversations. And I will never forget, I looked at him, and it was just a silence in the car. So from Mississippi to Louisiana, we're looking at about another 2-hour drive. We didn't talk. My mother sat there. And I can remember saying, I'm never going to deal with this. I'm never. Not knowing that I was going to deal with that. I am going to deal with that. So when are we going to start dealing with situations? We can keep sitting back and letting generations after generations. We're going to have to start dealing with situations. We're going to start peeling the layers back and attacking some of these things.
Yes.
Yeah, very succinctly, and I'll just echo everything that they've just said. Fantastic job. I think all of us here are waiting for the sequel. Amen. I think we're all waiting for the sequel. We're waiting for the sequel. And that sequel will have the power, just like this current version, to save a whole lot of lives and put a lot of people on the right track. In addition to that, I want the male version. I want the male version. Don't leave the brothers hanging. We want the male version of this, with all sincerity. But the intergenerational power of this piece is absolutely profound. And I think with that, friends, we all need to stand and give Hannah a nice round of applause for Minstrel.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Or maybe continue clapping, because let's thank our amazing panelists, Mr. Alvin Bibb Sr., Ms. Jessica Pickens, Dr. Stovall, and Ms. Sonia Chapman. Phenomenal. Panelists, please feel free to exit the stage, just turn off your mic and enjoy the show. I'm gonna be checking in with some of you, going through your phones, because I wasn't able to type up here. All right, please feel free to get comfortable. Miss Antonia, our amazing host, is going to tee them off to me because she has them on her wonderful iPad and technology.
Hi. Oh my gosh, such good nuggets. Like, there were some, I'm not on Twitter, but I feel like there were some tweetable moments.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Mhm.
For sure. And the one that actually, the one that like is most resonating for me right now was Jessica specifically talking about how they both are hustlers.
Yeah.
And that is where I landed when I mean, it took, again, it did take weeks and years and time and therapy and all, and conversations to get there. And I think this is a good lead-in because, into the questions, because there was a question, is like, why didn't you have a hustler girl in the film on the panel to hear her perspective? And as I sit here, or stand here, and process what Jessica said, you did. They're inside of us. We may not, so, and I think that we actually, you and I are really, I mean, my mental picture is like we're long lost Parent Trap twins, like, because we're actually living parallel lives. We chose different ways of survival, had to have the breaks that was required for me to be able to hear you in a way that my internalized self-hate, white supremacy lens wasn't allowing me to have, and one of those was volunteering in community organizations. And to hear and you brought it to a place that I had interest in, right? Film.
Right.
And so now we can hear each other in a way that, and I think that for me is why art is so important, whatever that is, because it's a through line that we can all relate to. And so that's just, I'll get into some questions though.
Yes.
Anyway.
Thank you so much, Antonia.
Okay, I'm gonna start with one that has been up-liked the most. And it is, what are typical reactions that you get to this film?
Thank you so much for that question, and for those put that in there. So, the definitely conflict and conflicting. I want to say 100%, but the public health side of me knows that I did not poll everybody who took this, so that would not be scientifically accurate. But I believe nearly everyone who has seen this has had an internal conflict, even if they cannot identify with the characters on the screen solely based off of skin color, because we are in such a racially lensed society and world today. They still have internal conflicts. I've had plenty of males come up to me, white, black, Latino, all of it, and say, as Alvin said, yo, that's me too. And I wasn't expecting that, right? One thing, so that's a very common thing. One thing that was not commonly spoken, but I do believe maybe more thought than is voiced, but somebody did voice it, and it was a question. And this was at one of the film festivals, forgive me, film festival, I forget which one, but it was a question from the audience, and they said, what is a minstrel? What is that? And they were moved by the character, but they had no idea what it was, right? And that really triggers my mind because, and really my passion for historical knowledge and background and context, because if we don't know our history, how can we not repeat it? So that was definitely, and I do believe that far more people that have seen the film and that will see the film will ask themselves that, and now it'll be on their mind and heart to get the answer, and that type of historical knowledge can elicit change. So, yes.
I love that. And in my own experience, I felt like, and I even included that as far as like trying to share it. Like the range runs from when finally this film to like this film. Like and I get the benefit of being able to know some of these things that you don't, but like I think that's how I would also describe that. And then like you talked about the conflict in the center. This one there's two questions that's actually related to profanity, so I'm gonna combine them.
Okay.
One, why did you need to use profanity to get your to get your message across instead of having the same conversation, rather like maybe they're white collar or blue collar or hustler or is the profanity what you feel we may understand the short film better or help us understand the short film better?
Sure. So in general, absolutely yes to the second part of that question, namely because it is that profanity within that character, same as the entire rest of this film, is a mirror. That's a mirror of our world today. It's a mirror of what goes on every day around us in media, always. So it's a mirror. So if I didn't do that, that would not have been a mirror. And little did I know when I was creating this mirror of a film that I was doing that, but that's indeed what happened, and that had to be reflected back to us so that, again, we can consume it and use it as fuel to elicit these changes that we need. So yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if I look at it through a lens of, I think it was Dr. Stovall, that basically it's the same person having an argument with themselves, I don't talk to my inner voice is not nice to myself. I'm not like, will you please, I'm pretty dark. Right. Yeah. So, and I think it goes back to maybe that's what led to me feeling so visceral, is that it snaps you up and wakes up, your attention. It gets your attention. I have a printable of George Carlin's 7 Dirty Words in my bathroom, but I think that those are something that's really it wakes you up. So I wonder if that is at least you start listening because you're like, oh my God. I mean, that's something that's my 2 cents there.
Definitely.
I'm gonna also combine these two questions. Please discuss the false dichotomies of choice that seem to be alluded to in the film, and a person was struck by the level of burden carried by both women in the film. So,
At the level of what?
Burden. So what can be done so that they can work together to maybe lift each other's burdens?
False dichotomies. Well, I want to have a longer conversation about that. For the sake of our time, I think that the dichotomies, it's it's professional, as somebody said, professional and unprofessional, or elite and gutter type of thing. It's that conflict, and it can be external, but it's also internal. I wouldn't say that's false. I experienced that. Now, perhaps within that question, it's media that creates a false context around that, and false opportunity for understanding, right? And I think that is perhaps the biggest farce that has to be addressed. And I'm hoping that this film addresses it directly, because as we just saw with this panel discussion, that understanding can be addressed internally first, right? And then through engaging in conversation and respect with others. So that part of the question. And Tony, can you repeat the last part, please?
The last part of it is what can be done so that they work together to lift each other's burdens.
Right. So again, I think as Sonia and Jessica said, probably all the panelists, of this right here, what you are here at today, this historic moment, this is what has to be done. Whether it's propelled or triggered by a film or a quote or spoken word poetry, however, this is what has to be done and then proliferated and disseminated and repeated. But maybe in a different type of film coming soon. And in speaking of thanks, I think Tony has some special thank yous to give.
I want to thank you all again for your time, your preparation, your investment, sitting here and listening, absorbing who you've already shared it with, your bravery, courage, commitment, all of this. So thank you. I also want to say special thank you to, there's co-leaders that are a part of this project that aren't here today. Amazing, and they actually suffered, both of them suffered some really major personal losses and still had the time to text us today and to reach out, and it was phenomenal. And they were two men who were constantly, in all 10 of our meetings, just were constantly like, yes, that's good, nope, that like, elevate that, what's pulling you back, like, and just really, really were phenomenal.
I'll say their names.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Jamie Gilbert and Keon Kemp. Some of you may know them here in this room and know some of the amazing work they do here in Chicago with Chicago events. So,
Yes.
So thankful to have them on the team.
Yes, the VIPs that are here, from that specifically from my list, Dr. Grail Kuczynski she's not only president of Making the Difference, but she is also a professor at Malcolm X College. Thank you to Ashley Baraseed, from Director of Development from UN Women Chicago, and to Emily Drake, president of Chicago International Film Festival. That is one thing that I want to be thankful for. And then just today we made some new friends. So want to thank Libby, Director of Events here at City Winery, who took a shot on us. So this was not set up as a private event. This was set up through their regular event module. So she took a shot on us. And thinking that like we had some skin in the game as far as a risk to meet, as far as a minimum. So we overshot it and made it, and that is amazing. Dan here at Director of Marketing. Today, Josh, the production manager, Noel, the director and producer of Film Quest Productions, that's been filming multi-camera and is going to be able to turn this into an amazing evergreen show that then you'll be able to watch and share as well. So as you're talking about what you heard today, know that you also can be able to say, when this comes out, you can be able to hear for yourself what Jessica or Miss Sonia or Dr. Stovall said, or even Alvin. And then to our team on the floor, to Carlos, Tiana, the bartender, Calvin, Danielle, Adam, Andrew.
Give a round of applause for them, especially all of y'all who got food and drinks.
Yes. The operations manager, Robin, she's running around here in an awesome houndstooth coat with her City Winery shirt underneath. She's very fashionable. The box office concierge. So yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And y'all, we need to give a huge, let me just tell you something. This event here would not be happening without this woman, Antonia. Everything that she said is true, and all of our history and stuff, and I know that this is just the beginning of what we're starting here. And know this, 2 women of color just put on, what would y'all say, 5 out of 5 stars? 5 out of 5 star show? I mean, you tell me. You will get a feedback form in the email. Don't think you won't. But and it's, what is the limit? There is no limit, right? So again, round of applause for Antonia. There's so much work that went into this, blood, sweat, equity. Thank you. I'll just say a closing, just a quick statement to you all. Dear audience members, once again, and this is So repetitive. I'll do it in a different language. Gracias, muchas gracias for being aquí hoy. That means here today. I'm so thankful that you showed up and during these times and committed to your word, followed through on your commitment. Something that can be rare nowadays. And I'm so thankful for that. I want to be vulnerable with you here. And I'm going to share this with you. This film creation, this movement for change through groundbreaking art comes at a cost, as I said. A cost of money, time, sweat, emotional bandwidth, and much more. And to continue to do so costs even more. Don't worry, I'm not asking for your money. Don't got to take out your wallet and none of that, Venmo, none of that. But if you believe in what you just saw and what you just heard, and the power that this type of art has to change our world, society, and communities, and you want to see more of where this comes from, I ask simply that you share MVP like crazy. Just share it. That's free. You can share it through media platforms, social media, messages, in-person dialogue even. Because if these issues come up everywhere, then how relevant might it be to talk about something that mirrors it and opens the pathway for change in a unique way that is not being done. Opportunities offered to continue to produce any product or service, on increasingly larger scales, stems from these opportunities being presented, being offered. Yet it takes awareness for the need of these opportunities to be created first. It takes awareness for the need of these opportunities to be created first. So, audience, let's make the world aware. Share it with all you know, and then some. Let's make the world aware and demand the opportunities. All right? Thank you so much again for being here. Give yourself a round of applause for being here. You're making history. We're not kidding, this is history. Network with those around you. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your weekend. And don't ever forget to be the change you wish to see in this world. Thank you so much. What a waste. I was always in charge, still am to this day. These loops that they have you hop and skip through, trick that ain't for me, that's for puppets like you dumb puppet. This deal, this scam, this continued chainery, let's break it and become who we were born to be.